Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to start one new topic, that is pharmacology. That is, we are going to start the antihypertensive drug. So before going to start the antihypertensive drugs, we should know how to regulate the blood pressure in the body. So let us start how to regulate the blood pressure. So first of all, we should decide what is BP. BP nothing but blood pressure. So what is blood pressure? Blood pressure is defined as the lateral pressure which exerted by the blood on the vessel wall when it flows through it. So what does it mean, lateral pressure? Lateral pressure. Lateral pressure. So lateral pressure is that pressure when the force acting at right angle to the direction of the flow at any point with a fluid tube within a circulating fluid. Now generally the blood pressure, normal blood pressure is designated as systolic pressure and diastolic pressure, which is given by this, that is 180 by 120 by 80. So this is called systolic pressure, this is called diastolic pressure. So when it rises, the condition is known as hypertension. Now at what condition we can tell that the patient has been suffering from hypertension? So when the BP rises, that is, the systolic pressure will be 140 and the diastolic pressure will be the 90. That time we can tell that the patient has been suffering from hypertension. That is, systolic pressure is 140 and diastolic pressure is 90. So now there will be three terminology. If the pressure is normal, what is the status of condition? Suppose the pressure is 120 by 80 mmHg of normal individuals. So what is the condition? The patient has been suffering any disease or disorder? No, because it is normal BP. So the normal individual is designated as normotensive. Normotensive. So if the normal blood pressure is above this normal blood pressure, suppose this is rises 140 to 90. So what is the condition of the normal individuals? That is known as, that is high blood pressure. So the patient is designated as hypertensive. If the patient has been suffering from low blood pressure, that is known as hypotensive. So these are three terminologies we are using here. One is called normotensive, another is called hypertensive, another is called hypotensive. So normotensive means the blood pressure will be normal, that is 120 by 80 mmHg, whereas that normotensive, that is called normotensive. Hypertensive means the blood pressure will be increases, that is 140 by 90, that is called hypertensive. And when the BP will be below the normal blood pressure, that is known as hypotensive. So these are the three terminologies we are using for the measurement of the blood pressure. Now we are going to discuss how the blood pressure is regulated in the body. There are two mechanisms. One is known as renin-angiotensin system, and another is called sino-aortic mechanism or regulation by the vasomotor center through the brain. So most important mechanism is known as renin-angiotensin system, that is called renin-angiotensin system. So by this mechanism we can understand that the pathophysiology of the BP. So here hypertension means increase the blood pressure than the normal, known as hypertension. So hypertension are two types. One is called primary or idiopathic or essential hypertension. So what does it mean? Essential hypertension nothing but when the pressure rises with unknown causes, that is known as essential or idiopathic hypertension. And if the pressure is the cause of the rising of the pressure, means if the factors which influence to increase the BP, that is known as secondary hypertension. That means the known cause, when the BP is rises with the known cause, that is known as secondary hypertension. Now we can start how the renin-angiotensin system regulates the blood pressure. We can start. First here we can draw one diagram. That is, suppose this is liver. Liver release one protein that is called alpha 2 globulin. Alpha 2 globulin. So this alpha 2 globulin comes to the kidney and it is converted into angiotensin 1 with the help of the enzyme renin derived from juxtaglomerular apparatus or juxtaglomerular cell, JG cell. Now this angiotensin convert to angiotensin 2 with the help of ACE. Then ultimately angiotensin 2 give to angiotensin 3 with the help of the enzyme aminopeptidase. Then it ultimately give to inactive fragments. With the help of the inactive fragments. Now, so when the kidney release the renin, there will be two mechanisms. Here we are writing, that is loss of sodium ion. Loss of sodium ion ultimately lead to the decreased blood volume, which will lead to decreased BP. Next it will lead to renal ischemia. So these three factors lead to low macula densa sodium. Low macula densa sodium ion. Then it will ultimately decrease afferent glomerular pressure, then ultimately lead to increased sympathetic tone. Sympathetic tone. So these factors stimulate the juxtaglomerular cell to release the renin. Next, these angiotensin 2 have the variety of action. First one, it will cause the vasoconstriction. So it will ultimately lead to a rise in BP. Then second function, it will inactivate the inactivation of bradykinin. So it will again lead to vasoconstriction. Then it will directly lead to stimulate the adrenal cortex. Release aldosterone. Then it will give ADH. Then it will give to retention of the sodium ion and water molecules and excretion of potassium and hydrogen, and ultimately lead to increase the BP. Then it will give the feedback inhibition. Here feedback inhibition. So this is the normal mechanism. So let us start how it regulates. So we know everybody is that liver release the alpha 2 globulin. this alpha 2 globulin is circulating in the blood. Then this alpha 2 globulin convert into the angiotensin 1 with the help of the enzyme renin. Now when renin will be releases, when the flow of the blood restricted in the kidney, when the flow of the blood is restricted in the kidney, that time only juxtaglomerular cell release the renin. How it is release the renin? You see here, we tell that loss of sodium ion ultimately lead to the fall in blood volume. That if the blood volume is decreases, what will happen? Decrease the BP. Then if the BP is decreases in the kidney, this is called renal hypotension, and ultimately lead to the renal ischemia. What does it mean, ischemia? Ischemia means decrease the blood flow to a particular tissue known as ischemia. Don't confuse the hypoxia. For example, renal hypoxia, renal ischemia. Hypoxia means the deficiency of the oxygen in the cell is known as hypoxia, but decrease the blood flow in the tissue is known as ischemia. So now this renal ischemia lead to the low macular denser sodium ion concentration in the, that is in the case of nephron. Then it ultimately lead to the decreased afferent glomerular pressure. Decrease afferent glomerular pressure. So when the afferent glomerular pressure decreases, it will activate the sympathetic system. Then it will rise to give the sympathetic tone. That sympathetic tone directly stimulate the juxtaglomerular cell. Ultimately it will release the renin. Now this renin convert the alpha 2 globulin to angiotensin 1. Then this is the angiotensin 1 is a decapeptide, means it contain, decapeptide means it contain 10 amino acid, 9 peptide bond, so decapeptide. So this angiotensin 1 convert to octapeptide angiotensin 2 with the help of the enzyme angiotensin converting enzyme. Now this is known as octapeptide. Decapeptide convert to octapeptide angiotensin 2. Now this angiotensin 2 convert to heptapeptide angiotensin 3 with the help of the enzyme aminopeptidase, and ultimately it lead to the inactive fragments. Now this angiotensin 2 have the major effect. First, angiotensin cause the vasoconstriction, that is it constricts the vascular smooth muscle. If the vascular smooth muscle is constricted, what will happen? BP will be rises. Next, bradykinin is a vasodepressor. Generally the bradykinin is a vasodepressor, means it will dilate the arteries. If the dilatation of arteries is happening, what will happen? Decrease the BP. But the angiotensin 2 cause the inactivation of the bradykinin, so it will cause the vasoconstriction. So another major effect is there, angiotensin 2 directly stimulate the adrenal cortex, means it stimulate the juna glomerulus of the adrenal cortex and release the aldosterone. That the function of the aldosterone is it retain the sodium ion and water molecules and excrete the potassium and hydrogen. So ultimately, if sodium and potassium retain in the kidney tubules, it rise to give the, or it will rise to blood volume, which will lead to the rise in BP. So when it is happening, all this mechanism has the negative feedback. When the BP is rises, then it stops the release of renin, so it maintains the regulation of the BP. So by this positive and negative regulation, that renin angiotensin system regulates the blood pressure. Now here I told that ADH I written. ADH means antidiuretic hormone, which is whose function? Anti means against, diuresis means it decreases the urine outflow. So how it is how it works? So antidiuretic hormones act on the kidney tubules, means the renal epithelial tissue contain the cyclic AMP, which is an second messenger. The activation of the cyclic AMP increase the permeability of water from the extracellular part to intracellular part. So this antidiuretic hormone activate the cyclic AMP and increase the permeability of the water from outside to inside. Thus it decrease the urine outflow. But in case of aldosterone mechanism, the antidiuretic hormone will be suppressed. Then diuresis will be, the rate of urine will be increases. So decrease the blood volume. If the blood volume is decreases, what will happen? BP will be decreases. So this is the mechanism of the renin angiotensin systems. So another mechanism called sino-aortic mechanism, or it regulates the vasomotor center, which is regulated by two pathways, that is by the sympathetic and parasympathetic mechanisms. So this is separate mechanisms. So this one, this is very important for the regulation of the BP, because all the the major antihypertensive drugs act on this system and stop the mechanism and decrease the blood volume or blood pressures. So thank you.